Good morning. It is Thursday, February 28th, and this is The Drill. And thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo, and apparently the only one that knows that everything can be known with certainty, that existence is primary, that we have free will, and that concepts matter, that they are as real as those things which we can touch and feel. And so one of the things I wanted to, first of all, let's go with the Op Hawkeye for today, and the memorial of the fallen soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. And today's memorial is for Chief Warrant Officer 3, Mark Stephen Osteen. And Mark Osteen was a Chief Warrant Officer in the U.S. Army. He was born in June of 1989 and was killed January 30th, 2003 in Operation Enduring Freedom. He served in the 60th SOAR, which is SOAR, NSDQ. He was a loving husband, father, son, and brother. Rest easy, warrior. And I now want to go to play a YouTube clip of Susan Collins.
Part of the tax reform bill last December. That's the basis of this judge's decision. You heard President Trump call this, quote, a great ruling for our country. Do you agree?
I don't. First of all, I would point out that this ruling is not going to affect people who are currently enrolled or in Obamacare policies or their policies for 2019. There is widespread support for protecting people with pre-existing conditions. There's also widespread opposition to the individual mandate, and here's why. The individual mandate penalties, 80% were paid by people, 80% of the people who paid the penalty earned under $50,000 a year. So this hurt low and middle income families who couldn't afford the cost of health insurance. And it's telling that when the tax bill was on the floor, not a single Democratic senator offered an amendment to strike the repeal of the individual mandate. That's how unpopular it was. I think this will be overturned on appeal.
You do?
I do.
In the Supreme Court or in the Fifth Circuit, or where do you think it's?
I'm not sure where it will occur, but there's no reason why the individual mandate provision can't be struck down and keep all of the good provisions of the Affordable Care Act, such as coverage for people with pre-existing conditions, the mandated benefits for substance abuse and mental illness treatment, and also allowing young people to stay on their parents' policies until age 26.
All right, let's move on. I want to ask you, the last 2 weeks have brought some major developments in the Russia investigation and the Southern District of New York investigation.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there. It goes on for a few more minutes. I'm illustrating this, or using her as an illustration of the kind of people that Liz Wheeler, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity should be talking about. Susan Collins is a Republican. She's a rhino. She's a Republican in name only. She's from a senator from a state in the Northeast somewhere. I don't know, and I really don't care. All I know is she's a rhino. She is one of how many senators there were? I think there were 6 that voted against the. There was a bill in the Senate about the Life for Children That Have Been Born Act, or something of that nature. It's about the ideas to come out and create a law, a nationwide law that says you're prohibited from terminating the life of a child that's been born. which seems to be okay in the state of New York. If you give birth to a baby, you're trying to have an abortion, you give birth to the baby anyways, then you can go ahead and kill it. And so the Senate said, no way. We want to create a law that prohibits that. Susan Collins was one of 6 senators, Republicans, that said no, that disapproved of that. So, but she is a rhino, and she's the kind of person you need to be thinking about, you need to be listening to, and most often, though, that's the person you need to challenge. Again, the left can't get anything done in this country without the help, without the aid of Republicans, without the aid, probably more accurately, of conservatives. So, and it is the people like or Erzat, or without the help of rhinos and people that can call themselves moderates. And Susan Collins is one of the people that calls herself moderates. You and I have to realize that there is no such thing as moderate. There is no moderate position on abortion. There's no moderate position on any of the so-called issues. There's also no moderate position on change. If you want to consider yourself a true conservative, either you make the presumption for the status quo or you make the presumption for change. There's no middle ground. There is no there's no way around it. It's one or the other. Now, I played this particular clip because Miss Collins is being disingenuous here. Basically, what she wants to be is what she is a liberal Republican. She's not a moderate. She is a liberal or a lefty. She just happens to be a lefty in the Republican Party. And her and Barbara Malkowski, whatever her name is, in Alaska, and there's a few others that are pro-abortion and still want to remain in the Republican Party. They want to get political or Republican votes and Republican money for their campaigns. So they go ahead and call themselves Republicans, even in very, very many ways. They're no such thing. They're not Republicans. They're not, certainly not conservative. So she was complaining or suggesting that or making a prediction that this bill in Texas, they had passed a law, or no, it was the law, the Affordable Health Care Act had been challenged in Texas, and a judge in Texas found it to be unconstitutional and struck it down and said that it's not law. So she's predicting that that's going to be overturned on appeal. She doesn't come out and say it should be overturned on appeal. She just makes a prediction. And that's a power move. It gives her plausible deniability. She can then say, well, I'm not saying it should be. I'm just saying it will be. So she's trying to get away with something there. So that's one of her little deceptions right there. The second one is she's talking about separating issues in the Affordable Health Care Act, saying, on the one hand, the individual mandate has to go because it adversely affects people on the lower end of the income spectrum. On the other hand, she's saying the rest of the Affordable Health Care Act should be kept intact because it preserves some of the mandates, i.e. force, where people are forced to buy things they don't necessarily need, want, or find compatible with their morals and ethics. Now, what she described was forcing insurance companies to cover mental health issues, and she named something else as well. What she didn't mention, and the whole reason that she supports the Affordable Health Care Act, is that there's also language in the bill or in the law that says that insurance companies also have to provide birth control and other types of women's health, reproductive health things. I do believe, as a matter of fact, that it also mandates that insurance companies have to cover abortions. That's why she supports the Affordable Health Care Act. Not because she cares about the mental health angle of it, but she doesn't want to get herself embroiled in controversy, so she leaves that out. The interviewer missed that. Shame on him. Shame on him for missing that and stopping and asking her, wait a minute. You're a famous pro-abortion Republican. And, what about the pro-abortion features of the Affordable Health Care Act? And, where do you stand on those? And confronting her with that, and at least getting her to come out and take a stand in public supporting abortion. But again, Susan Collins, among others, are the people you need to talk about, think about. If you're going to write letters, skip Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Skip those bozos. Okay? You're not going to get a rational answer out of them anyhow. They're not going to read your stuff. They're not going to listen to you. They don't give a damn about you. They're going to do whatever they want to do. The people that have to listen are the Susan Collinses. Okay? Those are the people we need to be talking to, trying to convert. If you're going to proselytize, if you're going to go out and try to turn people into conservatives, don't bother with the left. It is people like Susan Collins. Okay? And you can start. You don't even have to write Susan Collins a letter. How many people in your social circle are like Susan Collins? They claim to be Republicans, claim to be conservatives, but, I'm a moderate when it comes to other issues. Or they try I'm liberal on social issues and conservative on fiscal policy. No, what you're really saying is that you're confused. Okay, so if you have people like that in your social circle, you've got to talk to them and get them to do one of two things. Either quit this fantasy that you're a Republican and become a Democrat, a liberal Democrat, like what you're acting, or change your mind, get your mind right, and become a conservative, and act, think, and vote like a conservative. Okay, so when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the Ayn Rand Lexicon. And thank you very much. Welcome back. The Ayn Rand Lexicon, celebrating and I like the fact that she called it a lexicon, that this book is called a lexicon. Too many books refer to themselves as dictionaries. There is a philosophy dictionary. There's a dictionary of sociological terms. There's of market or of finance terms, all that kind of thing. They all call themselves dictionaries. A dictionary is one thing, period. It's all the words in the English language and that count, matter, or are considered important, all of them. Okay, so when you're talking about marketing terms, you're talking about philosophy terms, you're talking about theology, theological terms, for instance, you're not talking about a dictionary, you're talking about a glossary or a lexicon, as Ayn Rand has here. But the concept of the day is fraud. A unilateral breach of contract involves an indirect use of physical force. It consists, in essence, of one man receiving the material values, goods, or services of another, then refusing to pay for them, and thus keeping them by force, by mere physical possession, not by right, i.e. keeping them without the consent of their owner. Fraud involves a similarly indirect use of force. It consists of obtaining material values without the owner's consent, under false pretenses or false promises. And that was fraud, the concept of the day, reminding us that concepts are as important and as real as anything that we can touch and feel. And so I'm going to move on now. Instead of taking a little break here, I'm going to go straight into, I'm going right back to what I was reading yesterday, which is the 10 books that every conservative must read by Benjamin Weicker. And we're in a chapter that's about G.K. Chesterton, and this section is called The Mystery of Reason and the Suicide of Thought. With all this talk of the magnitude and mystery of human life, one might conclude that Chesterton was a giddy irrationalist. On the contrary, he took up the cause of mystery in the defense of reason. Since the Enlightenment, modern liberals have insisted that they were taking up the cause of rationality by using materialist philosophy against the superstitious mystery mongers of religion. But, as Chesterton notes, the odd thing about these modern rationalists, or materialists, is that their rationalism and their war against religious faith ends up in an act of suicide, with reason destroying itself. Chesterton was right. Enlightenment rationalism has ended in deep skepticism. Living at the same time as Chesterton, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who proclaimed the death of God, also declared that reason is only a mask for power, and all power is the result of the irrational strivings of the will. Other very modern moral relativists were telling us that there are no objectively discernible truths. Marxists were preaching that all thought is merely a reflection of the material modes of production. In our own time, deconstructionists in literary theory tell us that texts have no real meaning. Neurologists go further and inform us that our thoughts are mere chemical reactions in our brain. We have fallen into what Chesterton called the great peril, quote, that the human intellect is free to destroy itself, unquote. That is the madness of his time and ours. Quote, for madness may be defined as using mental activity so as to reach mental helplessness, unquote. The great mistake of all these modern rationalists is that they failed to understand that, quote, reason is itself a matter of faith. It is an act of faith to assert that our thoughts have any relation to reality at all, unquote. This act of faith is based upon our experience of life. We sense that our minds are constructed to know things, and that things themselves seem constructed to be known. That is, there is a design to the universe, and creation is full of surprises, that our mind is wonderfully apt for discovering. Chesterton avers that the way to approach this design is with a humble sense of wonder, appreciating its mysteries, including the greatest mystery of all, that we can know it. Our belief in reason is, in a sense, childlike, because it is based on trust that our reason is reliable and reality knowable. Rationalism ends in skepticism because of a certain kind of pride, one that tries to ground certainty in the human mind itself rather than in the mind's mysterious conformity to reality. In its quest for certainty, rationalism reduced reality to a mere concatenation of purely material causes that, because of their brute simplicity, the human mind could easily understand. Of course, that meant the mind itself was merely a material thing, and so, in Chesterton's time, and in our own, a materialist account of the mind ends in asserting that what each person calls truth is merely the peculiar firing of the atoms in his brain. Truth is relative to each person's peculiar head. This sort of skepticism and relativism, expressed in different ways, was as characteristic of the sophists of ancient Greece as it is of liberals today. Conservatives, on the other hand, believe that we can know truth, that truth is not merely a reflection of our physiology, our historical time, our economic circumstances, our hidden lusts, or the circus of our brain circuitry. Conservatives believe that truth is discernible by men as men, and that in our everyday lives we can experience moral truths about human nature, what again used to be called the natural law. The natural law is not limited to experts because it is known through natural reason and grounded in experience and common sense. These ideas have serious consequences, for if our everyday experience and common sense are the paths to truth, then self-government makes sense, because experience and common sense aren't the prerogatives of a few. But if we cannot trust our everyday experience and our common sense, then perhaps government must be steered by specially endowed scientific experts, rather than ordinary people. Which is why liberalism, the political home for skeptics and rationalists, is so comfortable with centralized bureaucratic government. And this, too, has implications. The conservatives who believe that man is endowed with reason, common sense, and free will is apt to see man as having inviolable moral stature. The liberal, on the other hand, since he tends to be a materialist, can see man as putty, to be manipulated into something different than what he is. And all of this is huge. Is absolutely huge. It goes right to exactly what I'm talking about. A couple of issues that I had here is let's see here. Modern liberals have insisted they were taking up the cause of rationality, using materialist philosophy against the superstitious mystery mongers, Enlightenment. Let's see. Friedrich Nietzsche. First of all, that's the one. He says the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. He's referred to as a philosopher. He wasn't. He was a philologist. He studied ancient manuscripts, and he was a novelist. He didn't write any texts or treatises on philosophy. He did no such thing. He wrote novels, and from those novels, his friends gleaned some sort of philosophical theory or message. So he wasn't a philosopher, at least not a credentialed philosopher. Let me see. Marxists were preaching that thought is merely a reflection of material modes of production in our own time. Let's see. I like his description of madness. For madness may be defined as using mental activity so as to reach mental helplessness, way of using the mind against itself. And also what the purpose of that from the Marxist standpoint is to frustrate people, really. When you get into all these circular arguments, one of the famous philosophical questions is you have a card, and on one side is printed the sentence, the statement on the other side of this card is false. You flip the card over, and the same sentence appears. The statement on the other side of this card is false. Well, if the one on the other side of the card is false, then the other one must be false, and blah, 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 blah. And so you end up going in circles. And the point of that is just to get you to say, you know what, philosophy sucks. Let me just throw it in the garbage and forget all about it. That's what the Marxists want you to do. They don't want you to think. They don't want you to debate. They want you to follow orders. They want you to do as you're told. Also, he talks about skepticism and how everything materialism ends up boiling down into skepticism, and skepticism being the contradiction that nothing can be known with certainty. And then he uses skepticism to justify rational thinking. See, rationalism ends in skepticism because of a certain kind of pride, one that tries to ground itself in the human mind itself rather than in the mind's mysterious conformity to reality. Let me see. Conservatives, on the other hand, believe that we can know truth, that truth is not merely a reflection of our physiology, our historical time, etc. Conservatives believe that truth is discernible by man as man, that in our everyday lives we can experience moral truths about human nature, that natural law is not limited to experts because it is known through natural reasoning grounded in experience. And but there was a part in here what he was talking about, let's see if I can find it, about faith. Let's see if I can find this. There we go. An act of faith. There we go. The greatest mistake of all these modern rationalists is that they fail to understand that reason is itself a matter of faith. It is an act of faith to assert that our thoughts have any relation to reality at all, unquote. This act of faith is based on our experience of life. And he's wrong. He's using, again, skepticism because what he should have said was everything is grounded in knowledge. And we know that reality exists, and we know this until we know something else. This is what I mean when I'm talking about not only is there certainty of knowledge, there's nothing but certainty of knowledge. There's no way we could function in any way, shape, or form skeptically. We couldn't do it. Okay, there's no way. You couldn't even get out of bed in the morning. Okay, we base all of the decisions we make from the time we get up in the morning until the time we go to bed at night on certainty. We're certain of various things, of what day it is, what time it is, etc. And we are certain and remain certain until such time as we're certain of something else. For instance, the flat Earth, and that it was centuries ago that learned scholars had concluded that the Earth was flat. And they did so by the evidence of their senses. And they were certain about that until we became certain that the Earth was spherical from various ways, shapes, and forms. From the voyages of various explorers, and eventually because of technology that allows us to escape the Earth's gravity, look back on the Earth, etc., etc. So, again, we know that our reality exists. Reality is unescapable, and knowledge is also inescapable. Those are the only two things that I would, kind of pick with it. Well, the third one is Nietzsche being a philosopher. He was no such thing. He doesn't deserve credit for being a philosopher. He deserves credit for being a philologist and a novelist, and perhaps a good novelist, but not a philosopher. So the next section of this I'll save for tomorrow. It's called The Great Gift of Existence and Extraordinary Ordinariness. And it's going to be an excellent section because, again, it drives home the point. And what I'm liking about this particular author in the chapter is how he is relating philosophy to our way of life. Okay, he in this particular section was saying this is important because all of the things that he's discussing in terms of materialism and skepticism and whatnot, because it makes the difference as to whether or not we can govern ourselves. If we can't, then we're going to end up being a socialist society. There's only two ways to go, really, socialist or monarchy. And it doesn't look like the world's heading in the direction of being of reinstituting monarchies. So, and if we don't have the ability to govern ourselves, then we have no use for a constitution, and we have no use for a Bill of Rights. So all of these underpinning things, and this is what the left wants to attack ultimately. They can attack and successfully attack the philosophical underpinnings of the Constitution, of the Bill of Rights. They can win, without a doubt. So that's why it's important. And that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.